Hi, welcome to the Our Time to Rise podcast, where we are doing a two-part series on living intentionally, pointing towards legacy, because lasting legacies are intentional. And we brought in the experts, as far as we are concerned, when it comes to intentional living, and that is Rick and Diane Thomas, also known in my world as Krista's parents. So if you haven't listened yet to last week's episode, that was our first part of our conversation, please go listen to that now. And we're going to pick up where we left off with Rick and Diane. And I just have to give my endorsement, because Krista got a chance to when she introduced them last week, that these are the two most generous people I know. I mean, so generous. We talked about this last week. That the spirit of generosity, of open-handedness, of everything I have is God's to be used for his good and his purposes. It's just so evident in how they practically help people. So, when you think about generosity, you think the practical helps, but also in how they treat people that come in their path. So I want to say to Rick and Diane, if I can say it without really stumbling over my words, that your legacy impacts more than the people that you have raised and your grandkids. It impacts so many of us that look at your life and think, I want to live like that. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit more, about living like that. And I want to talk about something we haven't really touched on yet. It's been implied by some of the things we've talked about, but you two really like to have fun, and you make fun happen for those around you. And I think that's part of the legacy, because you've built into the culture of your family a spirit of fun. But how have you cultivated fun, even in this current stage of life that you're in right now?
Well, I know one thing that's really fun for us, and we learned this from a friend of ours, so we can't take credit, but we call it the 10-year-old trips. When we, with our grandchildren, when they turned 10, we took them on a trip somewhere. And that's so we could just be one-on-one with them and, learn more about them, and they could learn more about us. And we took them on trips to Dude Ranch, river rafting, Yellowstone Park, Glacier Park. We took one to Victoria, BC. And the kids still talk about that, the time they had and spent with us. And that really formed a bond that, can never be broken when you do that. So, and my sister does it now with her grandchildren. So if I would recommend, if anybody has grandchildren, to start that 10-year-old trip, or whatever age. You don't have to, you could do it when they're older if you haven't done it already.
And I don't feel that Rick and I can take all the credit. I would say that all three of our children are they're fun. And they also generate a lot of fun in our gatherings. And the 10 grandchildren, they all love to have fun. Mm-hmm. So I think it's just has blossomed as a result of the personalities. And I think another part of that is we truly feel like each child has special gifts that they can give to one another, and that we also are the recipients of. I think about one of Krista's sons, and he has this quiet presence about him, but he's so deep and he's so fun to be around, because he's got this great sense of humor. But, the average person probably wouldn't know that about him. And then each one of them has different characteristics. We have a lot of artsy people in our family, mm-hmm. and especially the grandchildren. Mm-hmm. And so they bring out a lot of kind of interesting qualities, characteristics that we also can appreciate. So we like to have fun. We like to go and visit when they are doing special events, whether it's at college or whether it was during high school. One of our son lives in California, Santa Barbara. And so those grandchildren, there's 3 of them, we always would go down and spend, when they were younger, we would spend a whole week and help take care of them and babysit. And then as they got older, we would go to their special events, sports, musicals, that kind of thing. So
I would say too, one of the things that I noticed is that, like, when I would come to you with an idea, you wouldn't give me the reasons why I shouldn't do it, or like, well, have you thought about this, or have you thought about this? You would say, all right, let's brainstorm. Let's think about how to make this happen. And so it was always a green light. And that, to me, that's part of your fun, actually, is that you're green light people. You're not like red light people. It's not like I would come to you with something and you would say, nope, can't do that. Not going to happen. You would say, how are we going to make that happen? And let's think about that together. And you always encouraged my leadership as well. And that was fun for you to actually encourage in each one of us what we were doing and how we were showing up in the world. And I, like, as your child, that was so powerful to be on the other side of that.
Oh, that's neat.
Mm-hmm. And it demonstrates, again, that open-handedness of when you let a child or a young person have some say in the direction of something, you're giving up control. I mean, that's what you're doing, is you're saying, I am going to allow this process to unfold as it does, and maybe with some boundaries, I don't know, but to release some of that control. Did that come naturally to you, what she's talking about? Or did you have to consciously think, okay, I'm not going to be a red light person here, I'm going to be a green light person? Or was it just your natural instinct?
I think it's our natural instinct. I think both Diane and I tend to be leaders, or with idea. We're idea people. And so when they come to us with ideas, we just kind of build on that ourselves. Because, we never, in our life, never looked at the red light. We always, let's figure out how we're going to do this, and get it done. So.
Well, and I see that in your lives too. I mean, as an example, my dad, Mr. CEO, Mr. Business, like really incredible, naturally savvy businessman, is, taking art classes and painting. And, they're taking classes at the local university where my mom worked at Whitworth. And, this fun is more than just having a party. Fun is what you cultivate in your life that keeps you growing. And as a coach, I talk about all the time, the happiest people actually are not the ones that are always having a party. They're the ones that are growing. That's what research shows, that it's actually people are happy when they're growing. And that's what I see in you. I mean, as you continue, so to even tell us about that, tell us about the classes you're taking and what kind of things you're doing to keep growing.
Well, that was one reason we moved into our retirement center. As one of the benefits was that we could take classes at Whitworth University. And so we signed up immediately, and I took a philosophy class and Diane took a religion class. Mm-hmm. And now we're taking Core 250, which is a philosophy class. But it's such a blessing to be in with the students. It makes you feel young. We're sitting there with gray hairs sitting in back, but they all look at us and wave, and the professors know us, and we're learning a lot. We're studying all the Aristotle and Marx and Freud. It's stimulating our brains, clearing those cobwebs out. It's a blessing to sit and walk around campus and just be in with the students and learn how the students think and what their thoughts are and how they're growing in life.
Well, talk
Mm.
about bridging that generational
Mhm.
gap. I mean, that is such, what a cool way to do
Mhm.
that. And Mom, why don't you talk about even the chorale and what you're doing to keep growing?
Yes, well, I'm an old barbershopper. I love music. The opportunity came last fall that anyone from our retirement community could sign up, a minimal amount of money, and we could experience singing in a community chorale. And it includes professors, students, alumni, staff, as well as the community. In the fall, there were 100 people that sang. This spring, there was 135. And we did a German mass, which was a real stretch. You can imagine 80-year-olds trying to sing German. He also incorporated this wonderful director. He called them naughty operas, and also Broadway musicals.
Mhm.
So it was so much fun. We went for 2 hours every week for the whole semester. And it truly was one of the highlights of my year.
Mm.
And my whole family came and saw me. We have a granddaughter. One of our granddaughters from Santa Barbara. She's a freshman at Whitworth, so she even came, and her friend came because her sister was sitting two rows down from me. And so, just having that support too was really, because they realize that is something that just makes my heart so full.
Yeah, all those years you sat on their soccer sidelines, they came to cheer you on.
Yes.
Well,
And we're also involved in the Spokane Symphony. We go to a lot of the concerts, and then also the Best of Broadway. And I think that keeps us, along with fun, and keep us connected with friends. We meet friends before and have dinners, and just enjoy those culture things.
one of the things I'm thinking about your church too, and just what you do at church. And I think one of the pieces I notice about you that really stands out is your faithfulness to a church community. And you've alluded to that, but can you speak a little more specifically to how has it benefited you, and how have you kind of stayed in the game? Because it wasn't easy in your church to stay in the game. I mean, I've watched you go through lots of pastors and lots of seasons, very few people at the church, but you stayed in the game. So why did you do that? And what has happened because of that?
Well, I think for me, church is not just about the pastor. The church is about the community. Church is about your faith, your prayer life. I think it also is a time of supporting one another through hard times as well as good times. And I think because we did a church plant, not that all those people are still there, that's for sure. But I think it was a way that it's a way that we can be faithful, serve God, and love the people that come through the doors. I'm not sure if you have more to say about that, but
No, it's been a real blessing to me. I've been on a couple of spiritual retreats with other men, and it really connected me and given me a support group. Like especially now where the older you get, I got friends that are not healthy and need support, not only physical but mental support. That we can help along the way, and it's kept us on a straight line of like you talked earlier, Alex, about generosity. And everything we have belongs to God, and we need to share that. And we've shared a lot through the church, as Diane said earlier, with our sister church in El Salvador, and just with helping the world in general. And we have a lot of good friends in church, and and everybody is tolerant of one another, whether they're red or blue.
Mhm.
I mean, the politicals, and we got them on both sides, let me tell you, but they respect each other's opinions and,
Mhm.
don't criticize. They just support. And that's been one of the blessings of the church.
It's where we feel like we belong.
Mhm. Yeah, and you've created a place of belonging for other people by being faithful and keeping it going, because the church isn't just the pastor, like you said. It is a congregation that comes together to keep things going. Rick, you mentioned something about a lot of your friends are starting to have health problems. And I would say
Right.
for a number of our listeners, that's true of their parents. How would you recommend that people our age, so people in their maybe mid 50s, support their parents, or what questions can we be asking our parents right now as they're aging that would be especially supportive?
Well, I heard a term the other day, and I would just, it's how are you doing today? It's not how are you feeling. It's just how are you doing? How are you doing mentally? How are you doing physically? Both, mentally is as important as physically. And I know, like a couple of people moving into the retirement center, there's been a real strain mentally on them to leave where they've been, like Diane said earlier. And but it's just been supportive, and we've got a lot of guys that are fighting health problems right now, and we're just being present, I guess, and listening to them. You just sit down and talk to them and listen. You don't really give them advice. They got doctors that do that, and they got kids. But I would say just, I know some of the kids, and it's important, depending if you have a single parent, to go with them to doctor's appointments so that you hear what the doctor's saying and you can help your parent through that chart. And it's just, Krista and Kendra and Metze all has been real intentional about keeping us involved with their families, with their
Mhm.
activities. And that's really important. An older person wants to feel wanted and needed, involved. And so that's a good way to do it. It's just keep them in the loop all the time.
Mhm.
I think another piece of that, because we are surrounded by loss, in the retirement community. We see it. And a dear friend of ours from our church, he's been going through so much the last about 6 months, and seeing the journey that they're going through. And I just saw her last night when we were having dinner, and she came over and held my hand. And today their house sold today,
Mhm.
and I could tell she was relieved, but she knew that I understood. She's going through this tremendous struggle with her husband, Jim, and he's been in and out of the hospital at least 4 times in the last about 3 weeks. And then he's having to be moved then to a rehab hospital. And then she has the house situation. So all of this weight on her
Mhm.
shoulders right now. And I just held her hand, because there's just that bond that you can provide, just with touch and with the look back and forth. She understands. She knows that I understand what it's like. So just learning to live with that. And I reflect back on the night that Rick had a stroke, and our 2 daughters were at the hospital with me at 2 a.m. We had to decide whether they should do the surgery in his brain to remove the clot. And it was very, very risky. And that was a huge, emotional
Mhm.
decision. Those are the things that you go through as you get older. There's going to be a lot of challenges and pain. and emotional distress. But it's that support and the support that our children and grandchildren have given to us. And then I also had breast cancer a couple of years ago, and was fortunate that it was not as serious as a lot of women's journey is. But it's just oftentimes a part of life that we have to accept and love one another and be there.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a big conflict between families, because mostly aging parents, they don't want to move from their house.
Mm.
So you have to work through that. And, one way is to have them visit retirement centers and see how nice they are and talk to people in them or talk to friends that have made the transition. But, and it's interesting, I was talking, in fact, just the other day about at our place, and they said most of the resistance is from the women, not the men. And they thought it would be the other way around. Most of the women don't want to move into where the men want to. And I think, one thing for me was when I had my stroke and I knew, I was coming into this next part of life that, I thought it'd be good for Diane to be in a place that if something happened to me, she's got community and people around. And so that was one of my motivations, not hers.
Well, but I have seen that. I have seen that you have done things before you had to. And that's not typical. And you have, maybe it's from wanting to save us the burden.
Right.
And that's very selfless. And Dad, what you just described is selfless as well, that you want to set Mom up for success. And so there's this overarching theme of selflessness. And what caused you to do things before you were ready? I mean, I don't want to answer that question for you, but you really have. And Mom, that's actually specifically been hard for you a little bit. So can you speak to that?
I think that when we made this decision, and it was not as easy for me, I didn't think I was old enough to go into a retirement community because I'm a very active person. We do a lot of fitness. We ride bikes. We don't ski anymore, but we just are.
We climb Machu Picchu.
But I think we decided that we needed to look forward and not backward. And I think that was a turning point. And when Rick, kept pushing me, I knew that probably was the right decision. And another plus for doing that, we were able to get one of the larger units. We got to pick out all the amenities. So we really made it our own, and that probably is not as common, but we did do that. And so it made it more welcoming, I guess, for us to move in. And we also did consider our children. I know that a lot of families have a tremendous amount of distress when their parents are not cooperative. And we have heard lots of stories about that. And I think because the way that our children have supported us all these years and we have supported them, we didn't want it to become a point of contention where we were having a lot of fighting. And that just is not comfortable for us.
And we also saw the other side where it came push to shove where a parent, really failed and they had to move him. There was no place. I mean, right now the retirement centers and homes are filling up. And so there's no, you're taking maybe a place you don't want to go, or they don't want to go, but you have no choice. So that was one reason also to be proactive.
And they say the baby boomers, I'm just 2 years from being a baby boomer, but they're saying the numbers are so high that it's going to really be a problem in the future for people to even find a place when when there is a crisis where you need to have support. So that's another reason.
Well, you've done a great job of that, and that has been a gift to us, and it really has. And I would also say you've been good about your communication around it, and that's not always typical, but I think we as a family have valued communication, and you have led in that. And Mom, specifically, I'm going to call you out as kind of the ringleader of communication in our family, because I think Dad would agree that that's true. So how has healthy communication, how has that value been, just even throughout our lives, been activated? Let me ask that again. How have you valued communication and put that to practice all throughout our lives?
Well, I think I mentioned before that we are very different personalities. And one thing that I have so loved about Rick is that he has always let me be who I am and be true to who I am. And when I had things that I wanted to do or things out of the box, he didn't hold me back. And so I think that was the case with communication too. I think he's definitely has been willing for me to be more in the forefront in that regard. And I think I just appreciate that he kind of gave me the reins, because it's a more natural thing about me. I'm very extroverted and he's not. And so but I think he loved that about me.
I did. And then just a quick story, Krista's always been a communicator. When she was little, she would tell us, well, I'm going to go next door and play now. And then she'd start to leave and she'd turn around and say, now, did you hear me? I'm going to go next door. And she'd tell us like 5 or 6 times. And so it was, but I think we've always taught our kids to express their feelings. And as I said earlier, like when we used to have dinner around the kitchen table, every night. And I think that helped our kids develop communication skills. And naturally, they just came with them. So.
And I think, too, you made it safe for honesty. And I think that is important in communication. You made it safe to be honest. And so then when we get to this stage in life and we need to have honest communication about living situations or whatever, you've already had years of establishing that we can have safe, honest communication. And that's an incredible gift to everyone. I also want to talk about, one of the greatest blessings that I've experienced as your daughter is how you have flowed through every season of our lives. I have just really noticed how you haven't been stuck in a season or with an idea like that it should be this way. Our kids should be moving to where we live. They should be joining the family business. I mean, whatever it is. I mean, Dad specifically, when my brother Mitch, when he decided he was going to take a different career path and take over the company, and the way you responded to that was so moving to me. In not only giving him permission to do that, but cheering him on in his career path that was really different than what you were doing. And that had such impact on me. And I've just watched it your whole life. You're fluid. You're not just stuck in your ways. And so can you speak to that? Like, how do we become more like that as people?
Well, that's an interesting one. But getting back to Mitch, everybody I think wants to follow their passion in life. And they say if you follow your passion, you never have to work a day in your life. And I could see Mitch his passion was acting and the theater, and so it wasn't the tools and supplies of a construction company. And so, I've seen too many failures of friends of mine that almost force their kids to go into the family business because that was expected. And it's been a failure, and it's caused family destruction for many years. And so I didn't want that in our family. I wanted the family to be like we've always, compatible and loving each other. And so that's why even now when we just sold the company and our son-in-law Eric was running it, it's time for his next step in life too. And so, we looked out for the employees to make sure that company would continue and take care of the employees. But Eric now would like to go a different path. And I think we just encourage him to do that. And even with the grandkids, we just encourage each one of them to find out what their passion is and then follow that. And so we got some in the arts, and we got some in business, and we have some in politics, and some teachers. And so I think I learned that from myself, following my passion, because I did like the business. I did like the construction side by the side, but that was my passion, and I didn't, so
And you were really good at it.
I was good at it.
A good leader.
A good leader.
But
And his employees, I mean, I go in there once in a while, and the loyalty in the company, it is nothing like the norm.
Mhm.
There are many people that have been there 25, 30, 40 years, and they knew that Rick had the values that are so important, that intrinsic values that, people don't talk about. But he cared about those people. He would listen to them. He had an open door. And I think that's such a gift that, he was, and, you think about the construction industry and they're tough guys. But that was not the culture. It was a caring foundation, and people knew that they had to perform, but they also knew that he had their back.
Mhm.
But just like you and Krista, doing this podcast, which is a passion, and also doing the open door once a year, where you bring these ladies in. I mean, that's a passion that you gain from, and just spread your love and joy to all these people that come every September or October.
Mhm.
So, and we just encourage that. So,
Mm. Yeah, you're reminding me that legacy, we've been talking a lot about relationships and legacy with people and in family. But when we take who we are into organizations like your church or businesses, institutions, we also change the fabric of the institution through our presence and our leadership. And I think that's important that we touched on that too, because that is part of your legacy.
Mm-hmm. I have a quote that spoke to me that I just read the other day from, I think it was Kate Bowler. I know that a lot of people follow her.
Mm-hmm.
We become the sum of so many people throughout our own lives. And I think that speaks to legacy, that we are the sum of all the people that have been in our lives. Our upbringing, our choices that we've made along the way, what we value, and what we have learned and we hope to pass on. So those are just some of the ways that I think our legacy, that's how our legacy is developed, is through all of those experiences.
Mm. Well, thank you. Thank you, Rick and Diane, for sharing with us. Do you have any last words for someone in their 50s, perhaps, as they are thinking about the last third of their life, the last big portion, what they should be thinking about or considering?
No, it's just, talking about legacy, we're proud of the legacy we left our children, and we're really proud of the legacy that we're leaving our grandchildren. And we can see that in our kids, and the legacy they're building with their kids, which are our grandchildren. So, and they're all they're going to be wonderful citizens. They're going to be great humans. They're going to love the Lord. It's something we can be proud of.
Mm-hmm.
I
Okay.
think just one other point. If your listeners are grandparents, as well, 50, I guess you could be one at 50, but I think one of the beauties is that you're not the parent. You are the grandparent, and you can be sometimes a buffer, because you can just enjoy them and love them, and you don't have to meddle. You can just appreciate their unique personality that God has given them. And I think that also is such a tremendous joy.
Yeah, I have seen that. I have seen that the grandkids, the way they feel, and isn't that so true? It comes down to, how do you feel around someone? What presence are they bringing? And how do you feel about how they're welcoming you into whatever space, into who you are? And you make every grandchild feel like they are so loved and so treasured.
They are.
And so valued, and they are. But that is how you make them feel. And as a result, they are raving fans of you. I mean, raving fans. And that is legacy. One of my favorite quotes is, legacy is not something we leave for people. It's something we leave in people. And you are leaving such an incredible mark in people and in me. You're my hero. Okay, there we go. Here comes the tears that we knew were coming since the beginning. But you are my heroes.
Thank you. And you are ours. So.
Well, thank you so much for having us on your podcast. We so admire and love you both. We've been super fans from the very beginning.
Super fans. Our two super fans, Alex, right here.
Oh, I know. It gets back to that. You feel loved. I've known the super fans.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming on today. We treasure your wisdom. We treasure it, and we want everyone to hear it, which is why we wanted you to come on, because you have so much to offer the world. And in a world, I think, that doesn't listen enough to the older voices in our society, you just dropped gold. And I hope that people catch that in.
That's good.
Well, we're very, very humbled by you even thinking about us to do this. This was quite a stretch for us to think about.
I know, we've been practicing for days.
Well, in the spirit of opening your world and trying new things.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.